Some of you might not be familiar with like one of the greatest Twitter beefs in history, right? Some of you might know Harry the Owl. Harry the Owl is a friend of Lawrence Fox, and I've spoken to Harry the Owl before, and basically he went to the police and managed to get sentences of his and everything overturned. You remember whenever you did anything a little bit cheeky, it get marked on your little non-crime hate incident, like secret record that the police keep, to identify dissidents. That was the point. That was the reason they created that thing. It was to identify dissidents, and he managed to get it overturned. And he's actually done some very good work. But there was a trans police officer called Lindsay Watson who Harry the Owl, they fucking had it out with each other on Twitter, by the way. They were each other's nemesis, right? That went on for a long time. But it turns out that the transgender police officer has actually been sacked because of the little back and forth that they like to have with each other. Transgender police officer who branded free speech campaigner a woman beater and Nazi while targeting him for having gender views directly contradicting her own is sacked. Lindsay Watson sent ex-officer Harry Miller over 1.2 thousand messages over 18 months. I told you it was a big beef. It was a big beef they were having with each other. Watson targeted Miller due to his views about gender identity, a panel was told. A trans police officer who trolled a free speech campaigner, she didn't exactly do a lot of trolling. It was mostly Harry just laughing at her. Branding him a woman beater and a Nazi has been sacked. Lindsay Watson, 56, sent former police officer Harry Miller more than 1,200 messages over an 18-month period in which she described him as a fascist and a bigot and labelled his campaign group Fair Cop domestic terrorists. Because, it's not... It's not like the trans community to sort of, exaggerate and embellish things a little bit. PC Watson targeted Mr. Miller because of his views about gender identity, were in direct contradiction to her own, a police misconduct panel was told on Friday. The messages she made, factual assertions that Mr. Miller was violent towards women. She also described broadcaster Sonia Poulton as TERF, trans exclusionary radical feminist, intended to be a derogatory term. The panel heard she initially sent messages from an account in which she identified herself as a police officer, prompting Mr. Miller to complain about her conduct to Leicestershire Police. But when she was spoken to by a senior officer, he simply advised her to post anonymously instead of using a pseudonym, the panel was told. Now, one thing that I will say is, everyone's like, oh, police officers are supposed to be unbiased, blah, blah. No, they're not. They're fucking people just like you or me. They've got a favourite party that they vote for. They have political leanings. They have political opinions. And the fact that they can't go out and talk about these political opinions, I think, is a little bit unfair. But those things can also be used in trial. Like, say, for example, if I get arrested for being a spicy boy again, and I said a few things about immigration, and the arresting officer, it turns out, was like a card-carrying member of Stand Up to Racism or Hope Not Hate or something like that, then my defence lawyer would quite rightly use that as to basically say, oh, this person was targeting my client for his beliefs, and everything that could get used in court. So I do understand, police officers not being allowed to talk about stuff like that for those reasons, but I do still think it's a little bit unfair because, well, as you know, I'm a might partial to freedom of speech. That was the day he actually won his victory. PC Watson, because of his views about gender identity, outside High Court, and I thought it was going to give you a little bit of blurb about what he'd done. He basically went in and challenged an arrest that was made of him and a report that was made as a non-crime hate incident on his little private record, and he actually got it overturned. She went on to set up at least 4 different accounts with fake names, including one in which she claimed to be a retired officer from another force, as well as a Home Office advisor on policing and transgender issues with a master's in legal studies. Watson, a former nurse, admitted gross misconduct but had denied breaching standards relating to honesty and integrity. For solicitor Liz Briggs, outlining the case against her, told the panel it was clear Watson and Mr. Miller were at polar opposites in their views about gender ideology. And I mean, if you saw the arguments they used to have online, fuck me, yeah, they were. She said Watson was entirely entitled to strongly agree with Mr. Miller, and of course vice versa, but as a police officer must treat the public with respect and courtesy. I have many interactions with police officers. Some do that. Some of them do. Most Do not. She said the messages were derogatory and abusive, and there were other ways she could have expressed her views. Mrs. Briggs even says after she was warned about her conduct, Watson continued her activities online, setting up a number of different accounts in an attempt to evade identification, and in doing so, she provided false information. Watson admitted the allegations and breaching standards of professional behaviour relating to standards of authority, respect and courtesy, orders and instructions, and disreputable conduct. She denied her conduct breached the standards of honesty and integrity, which relate to when she was challenged on Twitter about her identity and denied it was her, and claimed to be a retired GMP officer, and on another occasion said she was a woman called Paula who had a master's degree in legal studies, but this was found proven, I think that's meant to say, was found proven false. Basically, you know, if you're going to create a character that's arguing about the legality, like arguing about laws and stuff like that, I mean, of course you're going to laugh and go, actually, I have a law degree. No, man, of course you are. Mrs. Briggs said her actions were intentional, deliberate, targeted, and planned. She added, an officer who is abusive towards individuals when their ideologies clash is undoubtedly going to cause significant harm to public confidence. Watson claimed she was acting on behalf of the persecuted LGBT community, even though they have special laws protecting them and giving much harsher sentences for doing things to them. They are now the privileged class. I don't know why these LARPers still think that they think they're walking through the fields with the sacks on their back going, like, you know, they still act like that. No, like, literally, we get harsher sentences if we do anything to you, right? If you do the exact same stuff to us, shit, you'll probably get away with it because we're fucking white and straight. That's not an underprivileged class. That's someone with privilege. That's someone with a lot of privilege. Miss Maynell said, but panel chair Kate Maynell, in fact, I'm skipping all these fucking parts, I do apologise, and posted anonymously to gather evidence about unknown officers who she believed were members of Faircop. But panel chair Kate Maynell, Chief Constable of Nottinghamshire Police, said that when considering the contents of the post, it is now clear how they would be a way of gathering evidence. Miss Maynell says, I find that the officer's conduct does amount to gross misconduct. It was inevitable PC Watson's conduct would impact the reputation of Leicestershire Police and police generally. She said she accepted that Watson had deeply held views on the subject. I also accept that she has a right to set those views out and defend and debate them, she said. However, as a serving police officer, this must be done in accordance with the standards of professional behaviour. In my view, it is precisely when an officer is engaging in a public debate about something they care passionately about that they need to keep the standards and codes of ethics at the forefront of their mind. She said Watson continued sending messages in the face of repeated warnings and said the content was not in keeping with debate. It is abusive, insulting, and certainly discourteous. And yeah, if you saw the arguments that they had online, she was not nice. Good God, she was like really vicious, vindictive, and horrible with some of the stuff she was saying. She said she also considered the frequency and number of messages and that members of the police force should not take any active part in politics. Again, I don't think that's fair, but like I discussed earlier, it can be used in court and blah, 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 yeah. That is the obligation the officer took on. In my view, her conduct would interfere with her ability to impartially discharge her duties and certainly would give that impression to members of the public. Like, for example, whenever I know that a police officer is politically charged, you know, they're a political person, I can always tell. And if they started arresting me or harassing me, I would be like, I know why you're doing that. It's not happened. I mean, it happened with Nazi Pug, but it's not happened. Mostly I get left alone now, even though I say mad shit all the time. I think now everybody's realised that, you know, 90% of the time I'm fucking joking. Miss Maynell said her conduct had a significant effect on the reputation of the force, policing generally, and our public trust. I am therefore in the view that the only proper outcome in this case is dismissal without notice, and PC Watson should now be included on the barred list, she included. Watson's Police Federation representative, DS Andy Spence, said she had worked at 2 previous police forces where she had faced difficulties and was not not accepted, but had been since joining Leicestershire Police. He said the tweets came from somebody who is trying to stand up for her community to ensure they are protected and to ensure they are not subject to the same behaviour that she has faced in her past. And by doing that, she was going online calling people women beaters and fucking Nazis and bigots and blah, 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 and just harassing and spreading lies about people. Yeah, Mr. Miller, a former officer in Humberside who was investigated after he tweeted a gender-critical poem, said afterwards, PC Watson appears to me to be the product of a culture within Leicestershire Constabulary which consistently promotes the politically contested ideology of trans identity through the raising of flags, its presence on pride marches, and its use of the pride and trans flag symbols on riot shields. It continues to do this in spite of Home Office advice to the contrary. PC Watson's actions must be set against this culturally poisonous backdrop, and some leniency should be afforded as a result. And that's the end of the article. Yeah, I mean, I feel that the feud... Oh, no, wait. Actually, I was about to go, so the feud has come to an end. No, it's not, because the officer in question now has nothing to lose. Like, if you thought 4 accounts was bad, this person is going to harass the absolute shit out of Harry. I've got a feeling. I have a very, very strong feeling that this is now just going to go into like full-blown harassment now. Like, full-blown harassment of Harry, because the person's already been sacked. They've already been sacked, so now they've nothing to lose and they'll go after Harry all the time. So, like Harry has won the battle, but I believe that the war is far from over.